Hello, and welcome to Exploring Axon, a podcast where we discuss Axon Framework, Axon Server, and their ecosystem. I am your host and a software developer at Axonic, Sara. In this episode, I spoke with Andy Whitaker from the state of Indiana. Andy has been working on a new project for the past couple of years and has faced some new challenges in the process. We talked about some of those challenges and why they came about and how he overcame those challenges. I hope you enjoy our conversation and let's have a listen. Hi, Andy. Thank you so much for joining me again. How are you today?
I'm doing very well. It's good to be back.
Thank you. It's great to have you back. And just for those listeners who have not listened to our first talks, can you tell me a little bit about where you are and what are you doing currently? Maybe I'll start with that.
Um, yeah, I'm Andy Whitaker, and I've been a software developer engineer for 2 decades now, and
Yeah.
it's, yeah, lately, last few years, I've really gotten into event-driven microservices and Axon and stuff. And right now I'm working for the state of Indiana in the United States. Working for a Department of Workforce Development, and I'm working on their unemployment insurance agency application. That's where I've been the last
Awesome.
year and a half, 2 years now. So,
Yeah, very good. So you and I spoke with your partner at the time, Joe. I
yep,
think now almost 2 years ago. I think it was. I think right
yeah,
before you joined this new project.
yep,
Yeah. So we had a really great talk about what your process was in into coming in to using these patterns like domain-driven design, and then adapting CQRS, and then using Axon Framework in your project, and what kind of benefits you saw in the process. Now, since you've joined this quote unquote new, because you've been there for a while now, it's
yeah,
as you mentioned, it's almost 2 years. So I understand that certain things have changed, and this project specifically was not using any of those patterns that you had been using in your previous project, and you have faced some challenges along the way. So let's talk about those a little bit. Can you
yeah.
give everybody a little bit of a background what this is about? And knowing for government projects, things usually go a little bit slower than what you like. So how has that been for
Yeah.
you?
Yeah, so I worked on the this it's the project's called Uplink, and I worked on that
Mhm.
starting in 2006. So it went live in
Okay.
2014. So I had a lot of old technology. I mean, old now. It wasn't old then. And over
Yeah.
the years, it's gone through several tech upgrades and stuff. But it's basically kept the same kind of architectural patterns, which don't
Mhm.
hold up very well over time as
Mhm.
things are added to and stuff. So they didn't use domain driven design. They didn't use, at least not at first.
Mhm.
And a couple years ago, I mean, right before the pandemic, the team there started investigating domain driven design and event driven things.
Okay.
And
Mhm.
but on a
And
team
this was before you joined, right?
right before I joined, came back, yeah, right before I came,
Okay. Okay.
I left in around 2015 to work on the
Okay.
project I
Gotcha.
talked about last time for another
Yes.
agency, and then I
Yeah.
came back during the pandemic, and they had been working on domain driven design, kind of uh, new approaches to new code.
Mhm.
But some of the challenges were you have a larger team there than I was working with
Yeah.
before, and a
Mhm.
lot of different opinions on what exactly domain. Everybody
Yeah.
read the book, and everybody came up with a different idea, and
Yeah.
so there were different ways of going about it. I came in, and they had asked me to come back because I had success at the other agency, and they wanted me to bring back what I had done there, which was part of that was Axon and the event driven
Mhm.
microservices. And so when I came back in, there was a lot of pushback at first from some people about, oh, here's another
Mhm.
framework to use. Why do we need another framework? We
Yeah.
already have Spring. We have all these other things we're using that don't stick around and stuff. And
Mm.
I did one project there, um, uh, for users to upload documents into Uplink, which
Mhm.
they didn't have before. And during
Mm.
the pandemic, it became very apparent that they needed a way to get documents uploaded quicker than prior to
Yeah,
that. They were
definitely.
faxing in, mailing them in, scanning them in. So I did one project there, to upload documents using Axon, and it was a success. And
Right.
then and that was a good thing. And by doing that, I showed the team kind of how fast we were able to turn it around. And it kind of helps some of the challenge there. We still have some pushback on
Mhm.
frameworks and things. And then
Yeah.
um, I worked with another more recently, just this last summer, I worked on another set of projects to generate documents that get mailed
Okay.
out. And we had to
Gotcha.
and the challenge with that one was we were given deadlines before we had
Mhm.
it's very typical given deadlines, but the deadline was basically our licenses for this other software we're using is running out. Uh, the other software
You gotta do
used
it before.
IE.
Yeah.
Other software used IE, Internet Explorer, which was being, turned off supposedly in
Mhm.
June,
Yeah.
and so we had a hard deadline of mid-June to get everything done, and by using the event-driven stuff, we were able to deliver really fast, real quick
Yeah.
iterations, able to build and release, and we met our deadline. We missed by a week. We begged and pleaded for them to let us have IE for one more week, so
That's
users
nothing.
would
Yeah. Yeah.
and it went live at the end of June, and we went through the summer, and then in September, I mean, we still have IE on the computers, so I don't know why that deadline. So
Just to give you some kind of pressure, right?
yeah.
Because you need
So
that, because you need more of that at work.
so
Exactly. So it's interesting.
so
So Andy,
yeah.
sorry to interrupt you. Just a couple
No.
of questions before we move too far away from
Sure,
the
sure.
first part of it where you were uploading documents.
Yeah.
So that part that you started, and it was kind of like a proof of concept for your team
Yeah.
that hey, this stuff actually works. So can you tell me a little bit about that? What was the um, main reason why you chose the framework and the event driven process for uploading documents, because that's something that we don't hear every day, that people who want to create an application that uploads or generates documents use event driven. Maybe it is, I don't know, but what was the reason why you chose that? And additionally, how did you sort of measure the success of it? How did you find out that it's, or show maybe your team who was maybe a little bit more skeptical that this actually works and let's give it a try?
Oh, so the reason we used it, we did the analysis of what we needed to do. We needed to provide. We broke down like the flow. We kind of what was happening. We need to be able to, when a certain condition occurs, we had to basically give the users the ability to upload a document. So the process is they get a notice in the mail. We send them something. We
Hmm.
expect them to fill it out and upload it
Okay.
back. So the first
Mm.
event was, hey, we sent them something. So with okay, there's an event
Right.
right there, and so okay, so that could trigger something, and what we used to trigger that was say, okay, well, if we when that goes out, we turn on a link on their portal
Mhm.
that lets them click a link to upload the response back.
Aha.
And some
Okay.
of the rules were it's like, well, they have to respond within a certain period of time. So there has to be something there counting down. Like once we give them that link, they have to be able to respond within, I think it's 2 weeks. Depending on the form, depending on what the rules are.
Hmm.
And so you have all these different
Yeah.
business rules. You have these different kind of things going on, and you have events where okay, they need to be given a link to upload it. Then when they upload it, we have to be able to say, "Hey, it's been virus scanned." Well, okay, so that's another event there that we've got this document uploaded and it's passed its malware checks, and then we have
Hmm.
to get it into long term storage, which is we use the FileNet right now, and so there's
Yeah.
another event right there. So there's this handoff. There's we want, but along the way, we always wanted to make the document visible to the user and visible to
Okay.
the support team in the state. So once it's uploaded,
Hmm.
even if it's well, if it's not been scanned yet, we can't show it. But we want to keep track of where it's at, and until it gets stored in long term storage, we still want it to be available to open it and do things. So
Hmm.
it lended itself one to the once we said, "Oh, there's some events here," I said, "Okay, there's some event stuff we have, and we can say we can have another service and say, hey, we have an upload document that's past scans. Go and we have another
Hmm.
service that says I need to get this stored into FileNet, and so we could make this
Hmm.
all asynchronous and and just triggered by these events. And so that was
Hmm.
so forget Axon. That was just event flow, event driven stuff. It's like
Yeah.
okay, and it makes a lot of sense we're doing this. And so we figured out like an event flow and the commands that would cause these things and the kind of queries we needed. And then I had my team, let's show how Axon we could build this pretty fast. We have
Mm.
queries, and we used Axon Server Standard Edition. We didn't, because I was still having
Okay.
to prove it before I could
Yeah.
get to buy it.
Get to
So
the enterprise. Yeah,
so
exactly.
so
Which was gonna be
so
my next question. Yeah, great.
but
So then
so go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
yeah, yeah. So that's really interesting because that's one of the things I'm always curious about. What kind of businesses, do you use event driven architecture and event sourcing in, which is really cool because you get these various use cases and
Mhm.
that I would not have initially thought about using event driven microservices for instance. So, kind of going back a little bit further,
Mhm.
when you were thinking about the architecture of the system that you're working in, so you mentioned that this was an older system. It
Yeah.
started several years ago, and various technologies came and went, and it sort of shaped and reshaped itself into
Yeah.
its newer version, right?
Yeah.
Was it a monolith, and did you then decide to uh, sort of go into more of distributed systems, or was that basically the system that you started using to upload documents, was that the first piece of what then became micro, I don't know if it's microservices at the moment or
It
just
it was
distributed for that
it
matter?
was
Yeah.
it was the second one. It was this the
Okay.
application is monolithic. Um, it's it's actually several monoliths working together. They have a shared database,
Hmm.
and you have
Hmm.
basically they basically communicate via the database. so so
Okay.
one app
All
will
right.
update a record, another app will read records, but they're all these big monolithic applications. And so
Gotcha.
so as part of this part of going through the pandemic, they introduced one microservice for sending emails. And
Hmm. Hmm.
it's not really and it's event driven, and but not using Axe or anything like that. But the that was the first one, and then I came
Okay.
along with the document upload, and
Mhm.
we've taken some other features of the app and we made them into microservices already. Not They're not event driven.
Okay.
They're more like things to go to integrate with other systems. We've pulled out their
Hmm.
code
Hmm.
from the monolith, and we've kind of made smaller microservices to do kind of integration points. So it's
Gotcha.
been going on now for maybe a year and a half now.
Hmm.
We've done a handful.
Yeah.
I'm most excited about the event driven ones, but
Right.
but the monolith is we have a lot of technical debt, and trying to
Yeah. Yeah.
break it down, and the team, um, it's slow because we have to keep the lights on. So there's a lot of things that have
Yeah.
to
Of
come. We
course.
have to get changes coming in. It's a government thing, so the laws change.
Mhm.
There's always other factors involved. So we have to keep the lights on, so we don't make as much progress as sometimes I like to make,
Yeah.
but it is progress. So and we are definitely getting more credibility because we have a new CIO, and his one thing was he said, we need to be able to deploy in the middle of the day. We need to be able to get this stuff out
Yeah.
there as soon as we can, and we can already with the microservices we can do that. We have zero
And
downtime when
it's great
deploying.
because it's like you just read my mind because my next question was going to be, what was the reasoning behind going into microservices? Was it just because you wanted to make deployment easier? You wanted to have
Yes,
a faster delivery, basically,
yeah,
is what you
absolutely.
wanted to have. Yeah.
Yeah, because right now all the apps, because they share the same database, they share a lot of common code base, they all get deployed at the
Hmm.
same time. So a deployment
Gotcha.
usually takes 2 or 3 hours, and everything. Even though if you
Mm.
just change one of the apps or two of the apps change, you get gun shy and you deploy everything because
Right.
it's just that's it has to all go together.
So we talked about the challenges
Mm.
at the beginning, and one of it was that things don't go as quickly as you would like them to because of
Right.
government requirements and changes and things like that. But you also mentioned that there was some skepticism
Mhm.
within the
Yes.
group and within the team, uh, even though there were. Talks and research about some of these patterns like domain
Yeah.
driven design and CQRS and things like that. Can you tell me a little bit more about these challenges and what was the maybe what was the biggest one that folks were concerned about within your team?
I think the biggest one was just having to learn something new, and
Mhm.
they were already. It's was just learning something. The team I worked on with document upload, their big thing was having learned something new. They were worried that it already takes everything's deployed in WebSphere. Like, oh, and now we got to run something else alongside WebSphere, and it's just going to slow us down. And then you have we have these events and these commands, and trying to figure out, the event sourcing was a big hurdle. I think they were worried about that, and then and then integrating with the old system. There were a lot of worries. The biggest one was always it's just another something to learn, and it's so
It's
hard. It's gonna be
just
hard to
one more
learn.
thing.
One more
Yeah.
thing to learn,
Yeah.
and and there's no real blueprint on how to do it. So
Mhm.
we
Mhm.
just we made our own blueprint, and this is how we
Yeah.
do it, and we can always change it. And that's the whole nice thing about it, is
Exactly.
that what really sold things, what the teams, both teams that both projects I worked on, what got rid of the skepticism was when I showed them, we could start up in your local environment and start one of these microservices up in 12 seconds versus
Mhm.
3 minutes with
2 hours.
WebSphere. And
Right.
you can make a change, and the annotations make sense, and it's just some annotations, and the test cases when I made them do unit tests,
Yeah.
and using that I think it's kind of under, I don't know what the Axon, if Axon excels it or not, but that test framework to teach people how
Yeah.
event sourcing works is a gem,
Mhm.
because that's what I did. We wrote unit tests together, and we using debugging, logging, and stuff like that to show how it works.
Mhm.
And once they
Yeah.
got over that fear, and they were just writing unit tests and writing things along and
Mhm.
doing a little bit at a time, and able to run it in their local and stop and start it. And it was,
Yeah.
and they were running like Axon locally in their computer. They didn't have a shared
Mhm.
database. They were just able to kill it, delete it, and start again. That got rid of the fear. That was the
Nice.
big thing, and that was the whole thing. Then the rest, then we basically, we all kind of like drew short straws about who had to do the integration with the upload, because that was the hard part.
I was gonna
So,
say the unit test part is not a big deal. When I first came across the framework, and of course
yeah,
there's a learning curve. You have to learn about the annotation, what they do and whatnot. But
yeah,
yeah, the testing actually is not that big of a deal. You
right,
you just you write the unit test, and my favorite is when you see all the check screen. And it's like,
yeah,
yay, the day is great. But the integration tests, a
yeah,
whole different issue. They still give me, I don't know, the heebie jibs every time somebody says
yeah,
integration. It's like, "Woo!"
yeah,
Especially in these distributed systems, right? Because you have to
right,
integrate with various
yeah,
parts, and yeah,
yeah,
that I understand. So you mentioned also about event sourcing was hard to sell. Can
yeah.
you tell me a little bit about that, and what was the fear or the
It,
skepticism there?
it was just, the fear was, how do you know your current state, right? That
Mm-hmm.
was the thing, was they didn't understand, well, why do I have to have all these different events to play back to get to my current state? And I said, well, in reality,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't you have a snap, I explain snapshots and stuff, but and then I explain projections. Your database is just a projection of what the real state is. And
Mm-hmm.
mostly it's not so much, uh, it's not such a hard concept. It just seems like a hard concept. Event sourcing
Mm-hmm.
just seems like, and one, the best way we explained um, was it's just like a ledger in your checkbook. Even though I'm old and I have a ledger and I still keep a checkbook, most of these guys don't have a ledger. But
You're not
so if you
old.
look,
I have a ledger too.
if you look at their bank account, you see every entry is an event, and that's an easy concept to get. And you can't change them, and you always add up to get the same value, and your
Mhm.
final balance is your snapshot. Those are, I mean, once you get past
I
that, it's
like that. Your final balance is your snapshot. I really like that. I'm going to steal that from you. Thank you.
well, yeah. So, and they've got, but that was, that helped sell it. And but the biggest challenge on the event sourcing was that, and basically, I can't change the events. And said, no, you can't.
Mhm.
And the
Yeah.
good thing was, they had already done, before I came back, they started using events for, not for event driven stuff, just to capture certain audit trails, just audit events
Yeah.
in their database.
Mhm.
And so they were kind of familiar with that, but they weren't familiar with building state backup from that. And
Gotcha.
so it was, and when the selling points was, when I go with document this new stuff we're doing, they're saying, "How many events do you have now?" I said, "Well," and I said, "As of today, we have like 11 million events in our system." And that's not,
Yeah.
I don't think that's a huge number, but
No.
it's like, "Oh, you have 11
Significant
million."
enough though.
Yeah, and they're like, "Oh, but
Uh,
you have to build your state up from all that stuff." I said, "Well, no, it doesn't, it doesn't work that way, but it's not that hard. It isn't, it's
yeah.
fast." And
Yeah.
and I explained the projections and stuff, the, I lost my train of thought there, but we recently had a few weeks ago, we had a security breach, and,
Mm,
it's the first one that I'm aware of we've had,
mm.
and I was on the team to help figure out what was wrong and how we plugged it. We plugged it within minutes once we knew about it. But we helped track it down by using those audit events. We found out who was
Nice.
involved and who was impacted by using
Yeah.
the audit events, about with these weird
Hmm.
logins we had. In the business after that, we did the announcement. Oh, those audit events helped us. They said, "We need more events. We need more events." I'm like, yes, yes, we do need more
You're like,
events.
now we're on board. Yes.
Absolutely, we need more events.
That's what I've been talking about for the past 2 years.
So, and one of the managers in
That's
the meeting I
great.
had was like, "Andy, this Axon stuff you're working on, doesn't that just work on events?" So yeah, we just have to pick the events we want to keep, figure them
Mm,
out, and we can store metadata on the events, and we know who's doing what. And so I've been through
yeah.
several demos showing that even with document upload, I can show it, go through the whole system, and where it made it through, and who did the uploads, and when it actually passed scans, and no
Mm,
one really cares about that kind of stuff so much, but the
right.
concepts are, it's there, we have it. If
Yeah,
we need to do something with it, we
exactly.
can. So,
Which is really powerful, which is really great. So when you first started using Axon Server and you started with the standard edition just to
mhm,
um, show it to the team and kind of let them play around with it and see that it actually works before committing to the enterprise
right.
edition. Now, once you moved to the enterprise edition, what were some of the values that you saw within the project? What was the thing that you felt, this is easier now, and kind of had
Number
an aha moment maybe, or great moment,
well,
or maybe both.
the dashboard. I mean, we got the enterprise edition, and we see the dashboard.
Mhm,
We get to see multiple contexts. So now we got two contexts we're using. And
mhm,
the team, what we discovered is that, the tracking processor stuff that's in
mhm,
there, being able to watch our system go, just giving some observability on, like, we can see our throughput. We were able, when we started doing the document upload and stuff, we don't have that much going on in there, but we were able to see, kind of like, oh, I can tweak this thread here. Tick, 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 tick. Okay, okay, now I'm processing these faster. Oh yeah, that was easy. And then the new project we just finished, the one, the notice generation is much beefier, and we're
mhm.
running. It took us a while to get it balanced the way we like it, because it has to integrate with a couple of different systems, and
Right.
that dashboard helped us see, oh, okay, this one's not processing events very fast. It's lagging. Okay, let's do this, and let's do some tweaks, and that, just that dashboard, especially the tracking,
Mhm.
where it showed us the tracking processors,
Yeah.
was brilliant. We That
Nice.
really helped a
Right.
lot. I had to build
Yeah,
my own.
exactly.
My last, where we didn't have Axon Server at all, we used tracking processors. We had to figure it all ourselves. We had our own database keeping track of everything, and it was a lot tougher. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I can imagine. And in the previous project you were working, your database that you were using at that time was Mongo, right? If
Yes.
I remember
Yes.
correctly, or yeah,
Yep.
okay. Yeah,
MongoDB.
gotcha, gotcha. So that was MongoDB. Yeah, good. Um, so that's fantastic. I know the UI really helps to see things without having to
Yeah.
going and figuring things out of the code base and doing all of that, which can be painful and time consuming too. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's you just want to get to the point. You want to get the answers that you want in a matter of seconds or minute at the most, and just
Right.
get on with everything else you need. Very good. So now you have been there for a couple of years. You have faced all of these challenges. Um, dare I say, is everybody on board now?
Yeah.
Or do you still
A lot,
have
a lot,
people that you have to convince?
a lot more. No, more people want to work on it. It's hard now.
Nice.
like I said, we gotta keep the lights on, so the
Yeah,
teams
of course.
get, like, they gotta work on keeping the old stuff going, and we have people that wanna work on the new stuff, and
Yeah.
that's now a challenge is get balancing out the resources and getting people
Right,
moving
exactly.
forward. Um,
Yeah.
we just got a new deadline, not deadline, but we were just one of the things in Uplink uses, Exchange, and uses Exchange, like old Exchange, and that server is going away. And it's for does you
Mm,
use it for scheduling on calendars and putting things on people's calendars and stuff.
I see.
And this morning, it was just like, yeah, that's gonna have to go away soon. You guys need to get the scheduling stuff off there and scheduling. Hey, events. Oh, this sounds like a nice little fit.
That's
So
right.
we're as I was doing right before this podcast, I was starting to do some analysis of what's going to take to get us
Mhm.
off of there, and what the what's going to have to be. But to me, it was like one of the things that is a notice has to get sent when they schedule. This is for scheduling hearings for like appeals. So when a
Right.
hearing is scheduled, you usually have to send out a notice to, hey, you have to come to a hearing. So that's like an event
Mhm.
driven thing right there. We did the notice generation. Now I can
Yeah.
have they schedule a hearing, I kick off an event to send the notice, and I think
Yeah.
this is going to be an easy sell. And so
Yeah, very
that's
good.
what that's the next thing on the horizon that just came into our.
Next step. Awesome. Gives me more material to talk to you. This is great. Coming back in hopefully less than a year and talk about this new project, which
Yeah.
is great. Really cool. One last thing I wanted to ask you, Andy, because of all of the challenges that you've faced, and a lot of them had to deal with people
Mhm.
and wanting
Yeah.
to sort of adopt a new way of thinking, a new way of
Yeah.
doing things. How was the onboarding process like once you convince them enough that,
Yeah.
hey, let's at least give it a try? What did you do to onboard them?
Mostly y uh, we did pair programming, at least at first,
Okay.
to
Hmm.
get those like I said, we did a lot of unit testing stuff, but,
Hmm.
um, I yeah, it was, a lot of this was that. The most recent one with our Nose Generation, I worked with one other developer, and it was a lot easier with just one, and
Yeah.
but it was the same kind of thing. It's just we did just pair programming. We worked through the domain together. We did
Hmm.
the event flow. We did a lot of diagramming together. So this is our event flow. This is
Oh,
our
nice.
command flow, and then we took one event and we just pushed it through all the way to the end. Right? We did the control.
Hmm.
We did the unit test to get the domain working right, and then we worked up to the controllers to get the command in, and just moved through. We call the tracer bullet approach. Basically you fire a shot clear through the system and see where it goes. And so
Yeah.
I don't like doing just one. Oh, we're gonna work out the whole domain and make it the whole domain work. I want to see it work
Hmm.
all the way through one event, get the projection working, and a lot of the argument comes. So this is something from the team is, well, if we do that, we got to go back and rework it, right? Because what if this changes?
Hmm.
Well, it's going to
Yeah.
change, but if you know from end to end, at least this one thing works, all your integration works, everything's
Yeah.
working. If you have to change it, you got to change it. Where it's
Mhm.
software. Oh well,
Yeah.
that's what that's just the way it is. It's
It's
the
code. It's nothing big. It's just code.
Yeah. So I mean
Nice.
that I think that helped a lot is we integrated all the way. We took one thing and we just drove it through from uplink with the integration point all the way to the other side,
Hmm.
and we just did that, together,
Yeah.
one thing, and then it's kind of okay. I'll go work on this. You go work on that. And we get back together and we compare things. So that's how I like how I approach onboarding.
Nice.
It works.
Yeah, and it seems like it sort of starts at the design level.
Yeah,
So you kind of looked at high level, at least what you want to see, and then go into a little bit more fine grain, and then onto the code. So there's
yeah.
quite a few things happening first before you actually sit down and
Oh
open
yeah.
up your IDE and start
Yeah. Oh,
coding, which is
absolutely, absolutely. It's
good.
harder because now I'm remote. It's harder to be able to go. I used to be able to go on a whiteboard and just whiteboard stuff.
Yeah,
We use sticky notes and did that kind of stuff. And my old project. And this one's a little bit harder. We argue.
yeah.
I always I I'm I'm kind of colorblind according to my wife because I can't match my clothes, but
That's great.
I do have trouble seeing certain colors, and so people look
Yeah.
at my diagrams and they're like, "Oh, that's ugly." And I don't care what color you pick. Let's change the colors. Change them. I don't
It's
care.
just
But
whatever.
I have a lot of arguments over colors on diagrams more than I should have.
That's interesting.
But it helps. I'm willing to lose those battles, and it helps build like, oh, Andy, Andy's easy to work with. I'll change all my diagrams around. If you guys think it's hard to read, I'll change
If
it
it
out.
makes you happier.
If
Yeah,
it makes you
exactly.
happier,
Whatever
let's
makes
just
you
keep
happy.
let's just keep going. Let's just keep going. So I
Yes.
mean, it is harder working remote.
That's important to be flexible. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it definitely is. But in some ways, it kind of eases things up a little bit too, right? Because you, as you mentioned, the whole issue of colors. How many, if you're working on a whiteboard, how many markers do you want to get to please everybody, as opposed to,
Yeah.
if you're working on Miro, you just want to change the color, just go change
Oh,
that damn
I
thing, and
used to
it's
get in
fine.
arguments over sticky notes. I had orange sticky notes and blue sticky notes and yellow sticky notes, and somebody would say, "I don't want to use orange for this." Okay, let's use a different I
Use
don't
something
care.
else.
You're missing the point. You're
As long
missing
as
the
we're
point.
all using the same color for events, that's all that matters. As long as we're
Exactly.
all using the same for commands, that's all that matters.
That's
Nobody
all I care
cares.
about. I
Exactly.
don't care.
Use
So,
rainbow. It's fine. Exactly. Oh, that's really funny. Yeah, we always have this joke. Our challenge a lot of time is naming stuff, or
yeah,
yeah, like
yeah.
in
Oh
your
my
case, it's
gosh,
coloring things.
I forgot about that one. I used the word
I'm
session.
sorry.
I use the word session to me when the doc upload when the notice goes out. I started what I call started doc upload session. That's that timed out is a timed session for someone. That session's live. They can upload. If it's 2 weeks, they go, well, session doesn't last 2 weeks. Well, a web session might not last 2 weeks, but this is a upload session. I still kept the name because I know their name made sense to me, but it caused so much confusion everywhere that I used the word
That
session.
ubiquitous language is no joke.
So yeah.
There's there are layers of challenges in there. Just you
Yes.
peel one, another one presents itself.
Yes. That's a good point. I forgot about that. There were a lot of the challenges
Yeah.
was coming up
Yeah.
with the consistent vocabulary. Yeah.
Well, and
The
it's, aside from joking, I think it's really important because if you, um, I've had various conversations with a lot of people about just that. If your vocabulary doesn't match another
Mhm.
person in your team, you're speaking two different languages,
Right.
and you
Absolutely.
you have to first understand each other's languages to be able to communicate properly, to be able to move forward. Otherwise, you're
Yeah.
you're saying something and the other person is hearing something completely different.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
unless you know that you're okay, I'm using one of the things I used to joke about was the word client, for example.
Mhm.
My pre-IT days and years, if somebody came to me and said client, to me it would be a customer, somebody
Right.
who is interested in my services that I have to offer and what have you. um, Client means something extremely different in the world of software. So if somebody comes to me and says client and I'm saying client, we think we're saying the same word, but it actually means
Right.
completely two very different meanings. So that always, yeah, it's an important one, definitely. Those, small details make that huge of a difference
Yeah.
once they're overlooked. And if we spend the time to really kind of get to those nitty gritty things and
Yeah.
smooth them out and understand each other, I think the process goes a lot more smoothly. Really great. So thank you so much, Andy, for your time. And I'm glad that the project is going well now. I'm glad we didn't have this conversation a year and a half ago.
Yeah. Exactly.
It might have been a different conversation then. Still a
Yes.
good one, but I'm glad that things are going well. And yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing more about what are the next steps
Right.
that you're going to take next year and so on. So we'll come back and revisit. So thanks
I'd love
again,
to.
and
All
good
right.
luck with everything.
Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Sarah.
Take
Thank you.
care.
All right.
Of
Bye.
course. Have a good one. Thank you for listening to my talk with Andy. I hope you enjoyed it. Please join me next time as I talk to other amazing guests with wonderful topics. Until then, have a great time and happy coding.